All right, welcome everyone. We're excited to have you join us today as we discuss ideas for delivering direct instruction in a distance learning platform. My name is Beverly Trent, and I'm the Director of Training Development with the National Institute for Direct Instruction. I'd like to take a brief moment to introduce our Outreach Director, Brian Wickman.
Thank you, Beverly, and good afternoon. On behalf of the National Institute for Direct Instruction, NIFDI, I want to thank you all for joining us for this forum. Because of the current circumstances, educators are faced with an even more daunting task than usual. How do you continue the important work of educating our students when you cannot be in the traditional classroom environment? To help you, NIFDI has launched this series of webinars and forums to help you and your students experience success with direct instruction at the same level they would if you were in the classroom with them. Please keep an eye on your email inbox and our webpage for announcements of upcoming events. Our goal is to offer one event a week. Upcoming topics will include end-of-year procedures and later program-specific distance learning teaching tips. As always, we want to hear from you and support your efforts, so please feel free to reach out to us at info@nifdi.org. Again, thanks for joining us, and I'm going to turn it back over to Beverly and her excellent panel.
Thank you, Brian. For today's forum on delivering direct instruction in a distance learning platform, I have three panelists who have been working hard to provide direct instruction to students through distance learning over the past few weeks. This is a live session, and we welcome your comments and questions via the Q&A feature. To find the Q&A feature, click on Q&A at the bottom middle section of your screen. You can also send your questions to info@nifdi.org. You have view options in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Click on View Options and select side-by-side mode to see all the panelists at the same time. My colleague, Rochelle Davison, Coordinator of Training for NIFDI, will be scanning your questions. We will address some of the questions throughout and near the end of this session. Please note that you are muted as a part of the default settings for this session. In this session and through other webinars and resources that NIFDI provides, we hope to share with you some ways you can continue to make direct instruction successful for your students. Today, we will be focusing on the related topics related to delivery of direct instruction in a distance learning environment. We'll be looking at types of distance learning and platforms that work well, technology, and instructional tips for delivering direct instruction in a distance learning session. Throughout instructional tips, we'll be looking at 4 sub areas: verifying that our students are at their instructional level, maintaining frequent responses throughout the lesson, providing immediate and informative feedback, and monitoring student performance. Let's get started. First, I would like to introduce our panel. And as I introduce each panel member, I will allow them some time to detail the grade level of students and programs that they are working with. Kristal Childs, Coordinator of Special Services at Gunnison Elementary, is joining us again today from Gunnison, Utah. Kristal, will you please briefly describe the grade level of students and direct instruction programs that your school is working with?
Thanks, Beverly. I teach in Gunnison, Utah, which is right in the middle of the state of Utah. Our school is about 560 students, K-5. We serve, our population is about 50% free and reduced lunch. We have 25 teachers and 45 paraeducators. By combining our Title I, our trust lands, and our special ed funds, we're able to serve an intense reading program, and we call it Power Hour. With our Power Hour grades K2, we use only reading mastery. And for our grades 3 through 5, we use the decoding program, but only for students that are not at grade level. Thanks.
Great. Okay, I'm going to move forward. Alexis, who's a kindergarten teacher and recently has been promoted to Assistant Principal of Instruction with Ewing Halsell Academy and Idea Schools, is joining us from San Antonio, Texas. Alexis, will you also please describe the grade level of students and direct instruction programs that your school is working with?
Yes, thank you, Beverly. So at our campus, Ewing and Halsell, we were founded in 2017. So we are a third-year campus now. And for our campus, we have DISTAR and 6K for our pre-K students. We have Armacy K, 6K for our kinder students. We have Armacy 1, SIGS 1, and transitions for our first graders. We also have decoding for our interventions, and we have Armacy 2 and Armacy 3 for our second graders. So that's at our campus in San Antonio.
Wonderful. So a lot of direct instruction programs that are happening at IDEA Ewing Halsell. And just to clarify for our viewers that are listening, 6K, 6-1, 6-2, that's typically what we call the language program. So they are using reading and language in pre-K through 2, pre-K through 1, and then they are using reading in grades 2 and 3, and then corrective reading in the upper grades. Did I get that right, Alexis? All right. So Tara Davis is also with us, and she's a project director and an implementation manager with NIFDI. She's joining us from Wake Forest, North Carolina. Tara, I know that you support many schools using direct instruction around the country. So please briefly describe the grade level of students and direct instruction programs that you work with in your schools. You're muted, Tara.
Thank you for the reminder. Thank you for having me today. And like Beverly said, I'm from Wake Forest, North Carolina, and I've worked with some schools here in North Carolina that had full DI implementation, so used a wide variety of programs. I spend a lot of my time now working in Texas with some schools there that predominantly are doing the direct instruction reading programs and language programs. Also some schools in Florida, and those schools are also working with the math programs as well. So they're utilizing the connecting math concepts and DISTAR programs, and that's K through 5.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tara. All right, we are going to get started on the topic of the day. So let's go ahead and get started by giving a little bit of background for our viewers. And so panelists, we covered this topic in Monday's forum on structuring your school or classroom for direct instruction learning success. However, will you briefly remind our viewers of the types of distance learning that you're using, and also which students are participating in what types? Let's start with Kristal, please.
Okay, Gunnison actually provides several types, but mostly we're using the live services. Our school already was very tech savvy. We had lots of technology. Our grades 3 through 5 were at one-to-one devices, and our grades K through 2nd had a 2-to-1 device, so they had their iPads. So going with grades 3 through 5, it was pretty seamless. We just deployed their iPads out to them and started almost immediately doing the live reading sessions with them. K to 2 grades, it took us about 7 to 10 days. So we sent out packets, and then we were able to deploy out their iPads. So we are now at 100%. All of our kids are using the live sessions with their iPads and Zooming with their teachers. We actually do have a couple of teachers that feel more comfortable just calling the kids and reading also, and doing a few recorded lessons. So that's the way we serve kids.
Great. So those students that teachers are calling, are they some of your higher needs students that you're having to do some review with over the phone?
Yes, so all the kids have a chance, so that would be in our kindergarten. So they have the recorded lessons, but just to make sure that they really have it, the teacher calls a couple of times a week with them, and they do the reading reading with them. And I wouldn't say just higher, but that's also the lower ones. They're wanting to make sure that kids are firm.
Okay, wonderful. All right, Alexis, will you also just briefly describe for us which students are participating in what types of distance learning, whether it's live or recorded at Ewing Halsell?
Yes, so at our campus, we have both live sessions and we have recordings of the lessons. So at our campus, we see our high performing college houses 2 to 3 times a week via live or recordings. And then for our high priority scholars in college houses, we're seeing them every day, maybe even twice a day, Monday through Friday. So we're really getting into that one-on-one sessions if needed, or a whole group if needed twice a day. So it's really benefiting for them to be on those live sessions at our campus.
Wonderful. All right. Tara, I know that you're working with many different schools across the country. I know that you're doing some recorded sessions and you're also popping in on some live sessions to give some coaching feedback as well, correct? All right, let's move forward if we can. And so we also went over this topic in Monday's forum on structuring your school or classroom for direct instruction learning success. However, panelists, will you briefly remind our viewers of the platforms that you're using to deliver distance learning lessons? And we'll go ahead and start with Alexis for this one.
So for our distance learning, we're using both Teams, Microsoft Teams, and we're using BlueJeans. So what we do on Microsoft Teams, we use a lot of grades, assignments, we do one-on-ones via Teams. However, we use BlueJeans for our bigger groups. So if we need to see maybe more than 10, it's just easier for our teachers to be able to see all of the scholars on the screen and call them out individually through the BlueJeans app.
Okay, thank you. All right, Kristal, what about you? What are the platforms that you guys are currently using to deliver those distance learning sessions?
Our school is using Zoom. So to do the live sessions and the recorded sessions, the teacher uses Zoom. Then for our younger grades, K2, we use Class Dojo to send out information and get their recordings back to us. So the teachers use that to do checking for mastery. The students will take a snapshot of their independent work, send it back to the teachers using Class Dojo. Our upper grades were really familiar with Google Classroom. So we use Google Classroom to send information out and gather information back to them.
Great. So you're using a multitude of platforms, and it sounds like you're even varying that between the grade levels. So Class Dojo down with the lower grade levels, Google Classroom with the upper grade levels. So that's good to hear. All right, let's talk about, if we can please, technology. So panelists, what assistance have you given to students who do not have tablets or laptops to work from home? I'll start with you first, Alexis.
So at our campus, we gave our upper grade levels Chromebooks. So we started with 3rd grade and we went down. So if they didn't have the tools, we were able to get those to them. However, for our little ones, we weren't able to give them Chromebooks. So we just depend on moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas for those phones. And so it's easy for those Microsoft Teams and BlueJeans apps that we have. So they can just download the app and they have it for them on their phone.
Okay, great. We're going to be talking about using phones a little bit later. But they are able to access Microsoft Teams and BlueJeans through a phone or a tablet then?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
All right, Kristal, what have you done for your students who did not have access to tablets or laptops at home?
So as I mentioned earlier, all of our 3rd through 5th grade students had laptops. And we did we did a survey, which kids had internet, which kids had another sibling, or did they have a laptop, an iPad already in the home. So we deployed in our K through 2nd grade about 70 additional laptops out. So now all of our kids have laptops, or not laptops, iPads, laptops, computers, so they have access. The other thing we did is our principal was really great about going out, and kids that did not have internet, she drummed up some business for them. So our local provider put in internet, so they have it till the end of May.
Yeah, that's something that's really unique about your school is all of the students now have access through a tablet or a laptop, and they all have access to the internet. So you're able to do those lessons with them without any issues in terms of access to technology. So that's amazing to hear. Let's go to talking about some technology obstacles. We're going to talk more about phones a little bit later and what we do for those students who don't have access to tablets or laptops. But just talking about technology in and of itself, can you describe a technology obstacle that you've had to overcome for a student or maybe even for yourself? For example, did your instructors have to increase their internet speeds at home? What kind of support maybe did you give them in that way? I'm going to start with Tara first because I know you work with so many schools across the country. What kind of technology obstacles have you had to overcome?
Well, I'm going to get this mute thing and unmute thing down eventually. So I think, in relation to what I just mentioned about the mute, I think just the fact of everyone having to learn new and different platforms is an obstacle. I know that for the school that I have that was doing live lessons, I offered to do a live lesson for them as a model. And one obstacle that we came across was the fact they were using Microsoft Teams, and that only allows you to show 4 students at one time. And so they had invited about 15 students to join the session. So of course, I automatically called on the 4 students that I could see. So I had to remind myself to call on those students that were on the participant list, but because you can't see them, they're not always ready to respond. And so I think what we learned from that obstacle was the fact that groups need to be small when you're doing live lessons. You're really looking at about 4, depending on the platform, but 4 to 5 students is really ideal when you're looking at doing live lessons. So that was one thing that we ran across.
Great, thank you for that. Yeah, we're definitely gonna be talking about group sizes and the amount of content that you've been able to get through. It's interesting to hear you mention that about only being able to see so many students at one time, because when you do have a lot of them logged in, you have to either click over to keep looking for them or
That's right.
so yeah. So that's a nice one. Thank you for sharing that. Alexis, any technology obstacles that your school has ever had to overcome, either with the parents or the students or the staff?
Yes, so one major one was, of course, just getting those scholars the internet access. So that was, one thing, like Tara was saying, getting them adjusted to the new learning that we're doing now. So what we did was, we said AT&T is giving internet, or we're, trying to get MiFi. So right now we are currently in the process of getting those MiFis, but in the meantime, our teachers and our wonderful lead team are going to the campus and actually printing out packets of the lessons that we're doing live that are still aligned to what they're learning. If they're not able to see it live, they're able to still get a paper packet and go pick it up at the campus.
That's awesome. What kind of things are in that paper packet? What kind of things do you include that coordinate with the lesson?
So we include a lot of fluency reading stories. So we'll do the reading stories, we'll do the worksheets, we'll even get some handwriting in, some Blackline master copies. So just things that they are still working on at home. And we want to stress, the importance of handwriting, because that's one thing with our kinder scholars that they need to continue to work on. So just things like that, language, the same thing, ask them the months of the year, things like that. So they're still getting that really great practice at home.
So they're not just worksheets that you gathered, they're worksheets that are intentional and working on the skills that align with that lesson or align with what that student needs to work on, correct?
Right.
Great, okay. Let's keep talking about technology. We shared in our forum on Monday, Connect Ed, and we noted that many teachers across the country are using their Connect Ed accounts with McGraw-Hill to present pieces of the lesson through those virtual platforms. But not all of our schools and not all of our teachers have Connect Ed accounts, which means that many of our instructors, if they're using the beginning reading or math or language programs, need to hold up that presentation book to deliver a live or a recorded lesson. Have you had any experience with that? And if so, what are some of the tips that you have for instructors using a teacher presentation book and holding that up to deliver a lesson through a distance learning platform? Kristal, I'm going to start with you for this one.
Oh. Okay, Tara, I did it too. I unmuted, yay. Actually, I use the book and hold it up, and just a couple of things, just like if you're in the classroom, the first thing you have to do is make sure that the kids can see it. I'll have kids say, I can't see that. So you have to just make sure it's up in front of your camera. The other thing I found that I really like is it's very nice for me to self-monitor, because I find myself, maybe my focus isn't right, and I can see it in the camera. So I think it's actually fixed some of the problems that I might have had, or I do the affirmations and say yes, and my finger's here and it should be here. So I think it's really nice that I have that feedback immediately, not only with the kids, but that I can see where I am.
Yeah, the young kids are not afraid to tell you right away what's going on, are they? So definitely. Thank you for that. Alexis, did you have any experience with having to hold up a teacher presentation book? I know you're working with the lower reading levels at your school. So any tips to share on that?
Yes, so, just piggybacking off of Kristal, just making sure that you're staying in the camera frame, of course. One thing is making sure that your background is solid and, less distractions is the best thing to have. Our kinder scholars get very distracted. So, just making sure that it's very plain. Also, just setting those clear expectations as you would at school. It's the same thing for your live lessons, making sure that everyone's on mute. Okay, when I call your name, you're going to press the microphone to talk so I can hear you. And then making sure that they can press the microphone again so that we can't hear what's going on in the background at their home. So, just making sure that you're giving them a lot of expectations, and also just making sure that you're giving a lot of think time, because again, we don't know how the internet is on their end from our end. So just the connections is very important that you're making through the camera.
That is so amazing to hear that you've actually had to kind of go over some, I don't know, beginning of the year type procedures in terms of teaching them how to click or not click on the microphone and things like that. So it's almost like you're starting the year over in some regards, and you've had to set up those new routines and expectations. So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I know I work with a kindergarten student 3 days a week, and as you can see right now, I have a lot of things going on in my background, and I have to really kind of make sure that I cover a lot of things up because she gets very distracted very easily. So that was a great point that you brought up about putting your webcam into a blank wall and things like that. Okay, let's talk about working with our kids who don't have access to the internet at home, or maybe they have access to the internet, but they don't have a tablet or an iPad, and so they're using mom or dad's telephone. Have any of you had the opportunity to work with them through FaceTime if it's an iPhone? Let me start with Tara first on this one.
Yes, I have one school that is doing the pre-recorded lessons. And so I've really been encouraging them to do something that is live so that they have some way of monitoring their students. And so they've reverted to using the telephone. And so they have twice a week for the students that are higher priority, those intervention kids, students that might not be doing well in their checkouts, those teachers are calling those students specifically, and they're doing fluency practice over the phone. Sometimes there might be some language practice involved. And so they really started off strong, even though they're not using those video conferencing platforms, they're using the telephone to continue that remediation process when needed. And then I think we might talk about this later, but they're also using the telephone to do their checkouts and to continue to collect data as well.
Boy, muting is the problem of the hour today. I'm forgetting to unmute myself now. I have some noise going on out there with a motorcyclist that's riding around our neighborhood, so I keep muting myself. So that's great to hear that they're getting some fluency practice through the telephone and things like that. And let's move on, talking about FaceTime just a little bit more. Alexis, have you had to work through FaceTime with any of your students at all?
Yes, and I've noticed that they also are on FaceTime for the live session. So I do realize that it works better for them. So, you know, whatever works for our parents and our families, but just making sure that that communication is open and, you know, calling them, is this a good time? Because all of our parents, you know, still have to work. And so just making sure that you're available and just being there for our scholars and our families. And so, yes, I have been on FaceTime a lot and calling them old fashionedly on the phone. So it's been a journey.
We're all in the process of learning something new, aren't we? Let's talk about just that strict phone access. Maybe they don't have an iPhone, maybe they don't have access to FaceTime or any type of video conferencing app at all, and you are only able to hear their beautiful voice over the phone. So for students who don't have access to the internet at home and you have to just work with them verbally over the phone, that's all you can do. Have you been reviewing some tasks? Tara, you mentioned that you're doing some fluency practice, rereading some old stories. Is there anything else that you're doing in terms of math, reading, or language that you can share? Tara, I'll start with you on that one.
So yes, like I mentioned, one of my schools started out from the beginning using the phone to do the checkouts. And so that's one thing that they're doing. They're asking the parents, like Alexis said, a good time to call. They're calling the students. They're having them read over the phone. They've also used that to do some language practice as well. And not so much a telephone access, but one thing we've done to monitor lesson progress and mastery with the students in language is they might have a set of questions to answer, and then they get somebody to record them answering those questions and then send that in to the teacher. And so that's just another venue to use since they are not doing the live conferencing there. But the checkouts, I think, over the telephone, I was a little apprehensive about that in the beginning, thinking that, oh, it really needs to be live. We need to be able to see these students. But it has really worked well, and they've been able to improve their data over time.
So you've noticed that the data, the student still reflects that, I'm sorry, let me back up. The data still reflects that the students are at mastery. They're still passing their checkouts and their mastery test, and you're not noticing a lag on that quite yet.
Well, I think in the beginning, it was interesting. And of course, because we had that lag time, right, of getting things up and running. I think in the beginning, when they first started the checkouts, they did see a decline in student mastery. And so sometimes they were looking at, maybe 40% of the group that wasn't passing the checkouts. But now that we've been in this for several weeks, they've seen that improve. And now it's looking like maybe 1 or 2 students is not passing. And so we've actually even been able to placement test over the phone, because we had some students that were finishing the Reading Mastery K, and we didn't just want to keep them at a standstill. So we said, hey, let's placement test them over the phone. And fortunately, like someone else mentioned, they were able to have the packets ahead of time. And so they already had that story, and those students are now starting Reading Mastery 1. And so that was very useful to be able to do that over the phone, and go ahead and move them up into another program.
That's fantastic to hear that you can keep moving forward and keep getting that lesson progress and maintaining some movement through the content. Mm-hmm. Alexis, anything to add up with that on oral tasks that you know that either yourself or maybe any other teachers in your school have been able to do with students just strictly over the phone?
Yeah, so I know for me, example, for reading, since I teach RMCK, I know that I've had to, call a couple of scholars on the phone and just have them practice reading to me, and even asking comprehensive questions, getting them to continue to think about, where is the dog, things like that. And I also know, my co-teacher, for example, she teaches language. So I know that she has to call and ask, can you tell me the days of the week? And it's just those little things that they can do over the phone without having to see anything on their end. So it's worked. It's working.
Yes. So I just want to share with our viewers just a few things that you can do over the phone in terms of suggestions for some oral tasks that work for phone sessions with students. So in reading, of course, we know we've already heard this. We can read the story and ask comprehension questions with the students. We can also do those read the item tasks that appear towards the end of Reading Mastery K and in the beginning of Reading Mastery 1 that really help our students with learning how to follow directions. We can look at background information. classification, opposites, synonyms, who, what, where, when, why, verb tense, all of those good language things that we see appear in language KM1. Counting forwards or backwards, either from 0 or a designated number. That's a big one for our pre-K and our kindergarten students. Mental math type things, adding tens, fact families, and there are even some pieces of story problems that we can work with as well. So again, it's that thinking outside of the box. Panelists, thank you so much for talking about technology. It sounds like you're basically doing whatever it takes to reach your students. You are using virtual type platforms, Zoom, GoToMeeting, Blue Jeans. You are using recorded videos, you're using packets, you're using phone conversations, you're reaching out on FaceTime. It basically sounds like there is no mountain that's high enough. You're going to reach your students no matter what it takes. So I truly appreciate that. Let's move forward. I'm not sure if we have some questions from our viewers yet. So let me just check with Rochelle and see. Rochelle, do we have any questions from our viewers that we can answer yet?
Hi, nice to hear you guys and see you. We do not have anything that we need to open up for right now. If it's not addressed by the end, then I'll bring it up then. Thank you.
Sounds good. I'm not sure what's going on with my lovely PowerPoint here, but that's okay. We'll just keep moving forward. Thanks, Rochelle. Viewers, don't forget to click on that Q&A question at the bottom of your box to ask us some questions, but we will go ahead and get moving into the meat of this session today, which I know is what you came to hear, and that's those instructional tips for delivering direct instruction in a distance learning platform. So we're going to move forward. And please note that NIFDI plans to deliver some distance learning training related to best practices for specific programs. So we are looking at best practices for KM1 reading, KM1 language. We're looking at corrective reading decoding, our math programs, our language programs, and we plan to create some training for you on that and deliver that very soon. We know that distance learning can take the place, we know that distance learning cannot take the place of live face-to-face instruction. We know that face-to-face instruction is best for our students because we are able to really get in there and monitor all the aspects of instruction for our students. But today we're going to cover some best practices that cover a broad range of instructional programs. So in an effective distance learning direct instruction lesson, we know that the design and the content of the lesson is not going to change. But the delivery, however, we know will change depending upon the type of distance learning that we're using, whether it's a video platform like Zoom or Microsoft Teams, it's a recorded lesson, or even a phone conversation, or even a packet like some of our panelists have talked about today. So we're going to explore with our panelists how they have changed the delivery of a DI lesson to continue to teach their students to mastery. And we heard from you after Monday's session that you really wanted to see what some of this looked like. So we're hoping to model a few things for you today as well. So our first topic is really looking at making sure before we get started that students are at their instructional level. Many of our schools across the country had a 2 or 3 week lag time between when students were told to stay home and when that virtual instruction was able to begin. So panelists, how have you monitored student performance to verify that your students are in a group that meets their instructional level? So I will ask all three of my panelists this question, and I'm going to start with Kristal first.
Okay, we didn't have a huge lag time, so we were able to pretty much keep our groups intact. We did have some scheduling problems though, because like parents, especially with our little kids, parents, it was helpful if they were there. So they couldn't meet at 10 or they couldn't meet at 2. So we did have to do some switching with groups. So teachers, some of the teachers, the instructors changed and some of the groups changed. And so if we had a child, we may have made it into a smaller group so that they were able to meet their instructional where they needed to be. We also started the groups. So let's say if I had to combine a group, I would start it at the lower level so that everybody was at their instructional place. Then we also monitor just doing the things that we would do normally. We look at error rate, we look at first time response, we look at their independent work to make sure that they're placed appropriately. And we have had to move some kids, either bump them up or bump them down depending on their data. So just like you would in a regular class, we're looking at data always. So our placements are data driven.
So good to hear that you're looking at that independent work and you're doing what you can to make sure that they're in a group that best meets their instructional level. Alexis, what about you? How did you guys monitor student performance and make sure that your kids were still in a group that met their instructional level? I know you at Ewing Halsell, I think you had a 2 or 3 week lag between when you were able to actually start. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so we had a 2-week lag. So in the beginning, we did it 2 phases. So phase 1 was just packets. So our whole campus just did packets and we reviewed. So we went back probably 5 lessons or so from where they ended that last day before spring break. So that was phase 1. We all gave packets, and just to kick off Microsoft Teams and things like that, we went into phase 2. So in phase 2, that's when we actually began our live sessions and our recordings and started uploading things like that. So in order to monitor things like that, we actually went back 2 lessons from when they ended on spring break. So an example, if one group ended at 110, we made sure to go back 2 lessons from there just to review on those live sessions and making sure we're getting individual turns. We're looking at mastery test scores. We're looking at checkout scores. And depending on how things like that are going, just like Kristal said, we either, moving things around, just things, since data changes, our scholars are changing places in their DI college houses.
Good to hear. So the kids are still in fluid groups. They're moving based off of their performance level. Tara, do you have anything to add with that? How you've been able to help your schools monitor student performance and make sure that they're in a group that meets their instructional needs?
Well, very similar to what Kristal said and Alexis. I think the great thing that some of the schools did in the beginning, even with the lag time there, as soon as they had things up and going, they started collecting that data from those checkouts. And that really gave them the information they needed to determine, like Kristal said, is a student's level of performance the same as it was 3 weeks ago, or has that changed? Which, for some students it did. And so we also had some students that had to move back. But then again, we found that some students did have the same level of performance, and those students are the students we talked about that placement tested and had the ability to move up to another group. And so I think, getting in early with, regardless of what amount of lag time you had, but getting in and collecting that data really informs your decisions. And then that also informs your intervention groups, right? So whether you're doing telephone or live sessions, that can inform, okay, who do I need to call more frequently than the students that are passing these checkouts?
Good. Great to hear. All right. Thank you so much for that, panelists. We're going to move forward to our next topic, and that is looking at requiring frequent responses from our students. And again, we know that live direct instruction is best if we can actually have our kiddos right there in front of us. But how have you modified your presentation procedures to support learning with distance learning, but maintained those frequent responses from your students? There are some challenges with getting, for example, choral response. So what kind of modifications have you had to make to your presentation procedures in distance learning? I want to start with Alexis on this one.
So what we did was we just completely did away with choral responses. So our teachers are strictly teaching through individual turns. So we are asking a lot of individual turns, and we're just going over those pages 2 to 3 times. And even if, something is introduced new, we're asking every scholar in that group that new material, that new sound, the new word. So we're just making sure we're not moving forward just yet, and we're hitting those individual turns throughout the lessons.
Okay, yep. So that might actually shock some of our viewers to hear that. And we're going to be showing them this in a little bit, but let me let Tara answer that as well. How have you had to modify presentation procedures to support distance learning?
Well, I think, the biggest thing is that when you're in direct instruction programs, we're all used to using mainly unison responses. And like Alexis said, we're kind of switching our mindset from that. And so realizing that now you have to maybe add some addition and some additional repetitions to the script that you weren't doing before, just to make sure that students get a wide variety of individual turns. So your sound pages, you might be doing multiple times to make sure all your student gets turns. Same thing with your word list. And so, so obviously that's a little bit of a change because you're having to add that extra step, which of course can change the amount of time that it takes you to complete a lesson as well.
Yeah, let's explore that a little bit. So sounds like a good amount of you are using individual turns in place of core response. And just like you said, Tara, you're going to have to teach the same exercise several times to provide an even distribution of individual turns to your students. So we're really following that repeat until firm step very well. So this is certainly going to slow down lesson progress a little bit. How long is it taking you to deliver a lesson on average? Can you talk in terms of reading versus language, you know, all the different programs that you work with? Give us a little bit of some time. Tara, let me start with you first. How long is it taking you to get through, say, a lower level lesson in K or 1?
Well, I know when I did the live lesson myself, we were given about a 30-minute time frame, and it took me 25 minutes to get through just the presentation part of the lesson. And we had planned on just doing that part. But what that means is that, and especially now that a lot of states have regulations on how long students can be logged in and the amount of time. And so what that meant for us is if it took 25 minutes or 30 minutes to complete the presentation part, then the story reading, if it's in a program that started storybooks, then that might have to continue on to the next day. And so your lesson progress you're looking at, instead of the lesson of day that we all are used to and encourage, that might differ a little bit because of the fact that we're doing the individual turns, and that's taking a little bit more time to make sure everybody has the amount of turns that they need.
Yeah, so it's almost like it's taking 2-3 days just to get through a lesson, probably.
Yes.
Kristal, you talked a little bit about this in Monday's forum, particularly as it related to some of the upper grade levels in Reading Mastery 2 and 3. And we know that those lessons are pretty long, particularly because of that independent work piece at the end. But how long is it taking you to get through one of those lessons in the upper levels, like Reading Mastery 2 or 3, or Corrective Reading Decoding B2 and C?
I know for SIGs 2, it really does take at least 2 to 3 days if you're going to really hone down on the comprehension, because that is pretty big, making sure they know all those facts and know all the sentences. And then I also think the other variable is how many kids are in your group. If you can get it to like 4 or less, you're going to be able to go through those quite quickly because they're able to read all the words to you. So with decoding, 2 days we can easily do it. But I do have the kids record. We do a lot of, they record and send it to me so that I can hear their fluency. So instead of me having to read it 2 and 3 times with them, they're reading it, we read it once, then they record it and send it to me. So that helps.
Great, thanks for that. So thank you, panelists, for that information. So just really making sure that our viewers know that it's mastery over movement. We know that we're working in a little bit of a different circumstance. We're all learning something new and trying to find our way. And we may only be getting through 2 lessons a week, but the students are at mastery and we're continuing with that forward momentum. So viewers have actually expressed some interest in seeing how to use individual turns in place of choral responses. So my panelists have agreed to work with me so that we can take a moment to model a piece of a Reading Mastery 1 lesson. And we're going to use individual turns in place of choral responses. And for this, my panelists will be my students. So I will go ahead now and show you a piece of a Reading Mastery 1 lesson. So here, what I'm using right now is just a little thing from Pinpoint Pro that provides some focus for my kids in the form of a circle. There are all types of apps that you can use out there. If you're a Mac user, you can use Pinpoint Pro like myself. Zoom actually has tools that you can use up in the top of your panel to highlight and do all types of things. So that's what you see here with that little black circle on the screen. My panelists are not going to make any errors just yet, so they're going to be perfect little students for me here. So no pressure, panelists. And just so you know, this particular exercise that I've chosen from a Reading Mastery 1 lesson, I did modify it a little bit and take off some of the words just to allow us to get through this pretty quickly. But what we're going to do is use individual terms in place of core response, and I want you to see the way I call on the students and the amount of times that I go through the words, okay? All right, students, here we go. Sitting up nice and tall, eyes on the screen, follow my black circle. First, you're going to read the underlined part of each word in this column, and then you're going to read the whole word. Read the underlined part, get ready, Tara.
All.
Read the whole word, get ready, Tara.
Called.
Yes, called. Read the underlined part, get ready, Alexis.
E.
Read the whole word, get ready, Alexis.
Clean.
Yes, clean. Read the underlined part, get ready, Tara. Read the whole word, get ready, Tara.
Then.
Yes, then. Read the underlined part, get ready, Kristal.
All.
Read the whole word, get ready, Kristal.
Almost.
Yes, almost. Read the underlined part, get ready, Alexis.
Woo.
Read the whole word, get ready, Alexis.
Who.
Starting over, read the underlined part. Whoops, technology at its best. I don't know why it's doing that way today. Okay, read the underlined part, get ready, Kristal.
All.
Read the whole word, get ready, Kristal.
Called.
Yes, called. Read the underlined part, get ready, Alexis.
E.
Read the whole word, get ready, Alexis.
Clean.
Yes, clean. Read the underlined part, get ready, Kristal. Read the whole word, get ready, Kristal.
Then.
Read the underlined part, get ready, Tara.
All.
Read the whole word, get ready, Tara.
Almost.
And viewers, I think you're getting the idea. Depending upon the number of participants that I have in my lesson, I may need to go through this exercise 2 or 3 times to make sure that I distribute those individual turns enough and hear everybody in my group. So that's one way that we can use individual turns in place of core response. And of course, remember, we're going to be doing those specific program trainings soon to show you some even more specific methods with that, okay? Thank you, panelists, for doing that. All right, so I skipped this over and I want to back up to it. So Rochelle, do we have any questions from the viewers just yet that we can have our panelists answer?
Okay. We have questions, but I think that we want to save them to the end because some of them you're still going to cover.
Okay.
So I would like to wait and then we can put some in at the end. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right. So the next thing that we are actually going to move on to in terms of instructional tips for delivery is providing that immediate affirmative and informative feedback, whether it's a correction or looking to tell them that the students that they got that word right through affirmations. So let's look at this a little further. So my first question relates to live distance learning lessons only. So for live distance learning lessons, are your instructors still providing consistent affirmations throughout the lesson? Kristal?
Yes, I mean, that's part of teaching, that you do the affirmations. It just is very positive with the kids and they hear it one more time. So we're teaching as normal, like,
Yeah.
Yes, put in those affirmations. Yes, be positive. So yeah, we're just doing it as normal.
Are you still using some real good affirmative type things in terms of the teacher-student game as well? We're going to explore this more later on, but still, you said as normal. So teacher-student game, positive reinforcement, affirmations throughout the lesson, all of that.
Yeah, lots of points, lots of cheers, like give yourself 5, kiss your brain, all those wonderful things that we do as teachers. We're still doing it, so.
Okay. So it looks just like you're still in the classroom.
Yeah.
That's good to hear. So for those live direct instruction lessons, are instructors also following the same correction procedures to ensure mastery of the skills and the content covered in the lessons? Let me start with you, Alexis.
Yeah, so for correction procedures, since like I said, we're only teaching through individual turns and not choral responses, the correction procedure for us looks a little different. So, we still do the my turn, we do that voiceover. However, when we bring everybody in, we're just, saying to that one student who did make that error. So, we're voicing over, we're having that scholar still sound it out, and then going back and repeating either that word or that sound or reread that sentence. So, and also we're making sure that we're still giving those delayed tests, because that's, are very, very important for us to make sure that they're still at mastery after they've given that error.
Okay. And for our viewers who maybe aren't familiar with that terminology of a delayed test, that's moving forward in the lesson. So maybe going to a different page, but then you're somehow notating what students you need to go back and quiz them again on a particular sound or a particular word. So you're still going backwards in that presentation and testing those kids again on items they've missed, correct?
Right.
Yeah, okay. Kristal, anything to add on that in terms of correction procedures? How are you correcting your students to ensure mastery of skills in those live lessons?
In the live lessons, we're just using the same correction procedures. Just like Alexis said, I do have the kids chirp in, and even if it isn't exactly together, they still know, because I think that helps them stay on task with me. So even if it's not exactly together, they know that they have to chirp in and stay with me. And I just want to say also with affirmations, sometimes when we're using technology, we have that lag time and you're not exactly sure what you hear from kids. Today I was doing some reading champ and clamp, which is really hard for me because of technology. We were having a hard time. So yes, I was making sure clamp or champ so that they could hear it also. So I think we definitely need to use those affirmations because sometimes our internet isn't working exactly like it should.
Or it might skip a little bit. So
Yeah.
you may have to kind of repeat a word a couple times if it starts with a stop sound, something like that. So I know that our viewers have also expressed some interest in seeing how to correct the group on an individual turn error. So since we're switching this idea of teaching through individual turns, we still want to try to correct the group if possible, and bring everybody in. And Kristal, you mentioned this, not everybody's going to be together, but the importance is that we heard one student make a mistake. We're still going to direct that correction to the group, because even though, for example, Tara may make a mistake, it may be that Alexis could have made that same mistake in her head and we're not sure. So again, my panelists have offered to be students for me. And so I'm going to show you again that same Reading Mastery 1 lesson. And this time, Tara's going to make a mistake for us. She's agreed to be my student that's going to make a mistake. And you'll just hear how we correct that to the group. You'll notice that my panelists will not be able to answer together, but they'll still go through that correction together, okay? All right, so here we go. Students sitting up nice and tall, eyes on the screen. Remember to follow that black circle. First, you're going to read the underlined part of each word in this column, and then you're going to read the whole word. Read the underlined part, get ready, Kristal.
All.
Read the whole word, get ready, Kristal.
Called.
Yes, called. Read the underlined part, get ready, Alexis.
E.
Read the whole word, get ready, Alexis.
Clean.
Yes, clean. Read the underlined part, get ready, Tara. Read the whole word, get ready, Tara.
That.
Listen, the word is then. Everybody, what word?
Then.
Then.
Yes, then. Spell then. Get ready.
T-H-E-N.
What word did you spell, everybody?
Then.
Yes, then. Starting over, sitting up nice and tall. Read the underlined part. Get ready, Alexis.
All.
Read the whole word. Get ready. Alexis.
Called.
Yes, called. I love how your eyes are on me. Read the underlined part. Get ready. Kristal.
E.
Read the whole word. Get ready. Kristal.
Clean.
Yes, clean. Read the underlined part. Get ready. Tara. Read the whole word. Get ready. Tara.
Then.
Yes, then. So I'm making sure that even though I brought everybody in on the correction, I come back and just make sure I give that to Tara. And as Alexis mentioned, I might go on to the next exercise, but after I finish that exercise, I'm going to come back and give that delayed test to Tara again and make sure she can remember that that word is what, Tara?
Then.
She got it. Yes, then. So thank you for that, guys. Thank you for following along with that. So we've talked a little bit about live sessions and, you know, getting that affirmative feedback to our students and that informative feedback to our students if they make a mistake. But in recorded distance learning, it's going to change a little bit. We can't hear our student responses, and so we're not able to necessarily affirm those responses. So how are you providing feedback throughout the lesson if you're doing a recorded session? Let me start with you first, Tara.
Okay, so I think, like you said, it looks a little bit different when you're doing a pre-recorded session, a video. We certainly don't want to affirm something when we cannot see or hear a student and give them the idea that their answer was correct when we don't really know if it was correct or not. So I still think it's important that we're giving them the feedback by letting them know what the correct answer is. And so that might just be repeating the correct answer or saying the answer is. For example, if a student has to sound out a word, we still want the teacher to show them as the answer how that word should sound when they sound it out, so they have that feedback. I know another thing that some of my schools are doing, and this kind of goes back to independent work, but because they are not live, they are taking pictures of the independent work and sending that in to the teachers. And then the next day on the video, the teacher is holding up samples and pointing out things that students are doing well, or maybe things that students need to improve upon. And so they're getting that feedback kind of as a whole just by watching those videos.
That's excellent to hear. So the teacher is able to take that independent work and provide some examples of positive work that was done correctly, and then some non-examples. We need to fix this one up here. So they're able to do that. Okay. Alexis, I'm watching our time, guys, and I've just been so excited talking to you here today. I'm looking that we're already upon the hour, and I know we have some more questions we need to get through, but I think this is so important. You have been doing exactly this. You've been doing a lot of recorded lessons. So would you mind modeling for us how you provide feedback on a small part of an RMSEK lesson?
Yeah, of course. All right, scholars, sound it out. Get ready. They. What word? They. Get ready to read these words the fast way. Get ready. Mom. Get ready. Then. Get ready. Bed.
That's great, Alexis. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that because it just shows that the lesson didn't really change, but what did change was how you gave feedback to the kids. So Alexis started with exercise 8 for sounding out the word they, and she did everything that she normally would in terms of think time, signaling, but she came in afterwards and gave the correct sounding out for the word they. And then of course she said what word, and then came in and just said they. And then same thing when she went to exercise 9 and started to do reading the words the fast way. You saw that pause, that 3 seconds of think time that we know we're supposed to give for the kids. And then she signaled, and told the students the correct word. So that's a great way to provide feedback on a recorded lesson. Thank you, Alexis, for modeling that for us. I appreciate it. All right, guys, we're going to move forward and talk about our last topic of the day, which is monitoring our student performance closely. Now, you've already talked about the fact that you're continuing to use mastery tests and checkouts, reading with kids over the phone, looking at independent work, constantly looking at student performance. Kristal, you talked about monitoring first-time correct responses throughout the lesson. Let's talk a little bit about types of motivation and behavioral support that you're using. Are you still using the student-teacher game? Also, what other incentives are working well for your kids? We are in a different environment, so how are you keeping those kids motivated and working throughout the lesson? Tara, let's start with you first on this one.
I'm getting better at this unmute thing. So I know that when I did the live lesson, and the school that I have that started doing live lessons, I used the teacher-student game, and we had a point goal that we were working towards. Now, when I awarded student points, that looked a little bit differently. I specifically told them what they were earning points for, being ready when they heard their name, looking at the screen so I could tell they were engaged, answering correctly. And we would constantly I had it on an old-fashioned clipboard and held it up, and we counted points every once in a while. And then at the end, if they met their goal, we had a little celebration, and all the kids in Texas, they all know the celebration. So that was something that they looked forward to that we did at the end of the lesson. And so that was a way, even though I'm not there with them, or the teacher's not there with them, to still keep them used to what they're doing in the classroom and keep them motivated and engaged during the lesson.
Great. Yeah. Alexis, same question for you. You still using the student-teacher game? What other incentives are you doing with your students? You're so great at keeping the kids engaged and energetic throughout the lesson. So share that with us, please.
Yeah, so it's been an adjustment on all of us, but teacher-student game will always be one that, idea and what we stand for is just that teacher-student game and keeping them motivated through that. And so, the kids look forward to beating me. So that's one thing that they just love. And so I'm like, at the end, wow, you guys beat me. And just hyping them up for all their hard work throughout the lesson, really just makes them feel good. And I do a lot of celebrations, as you know, Beverly. So, we do a whole word attack without making any mistakes. We get to do a celebration. And so they still look forward to doing that. They say, Miss Botello, can we do this celebration? They remember all the ones we've done in school. So it's really, really neat to see. And a lot of, virtual high fives, some fist bumps, and kiss your brains real quick, or hug yourself and say, we're awesome, things like that. They love it. So it's been keeping them motivated throughout our lessons.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, just because some of our viewers may not know what a celebration is. Would you mind modeling one for us? We do them so much. And just like you said, if the kids do a whole page of words without making a mistake, you'll say, what's our celebration? Would you mind modeling one?
Yeah, of course. Okay. All right, scholars. So we got all of those words correctly without making a mistake. Everyone put your seatbelts on. We're doing the roller coaster. Here we go. And close your eyes and say, woo!
So there's lots of ones that they do like that. Thanks, Alexis, for sharing that. And it's just a great way to keep the kids motivated throughout the lesson. Let's talk about independent work a little bit. And again, I'm trying to really keep conscious of our time. I notice it's 5 after the hour. So viewers, if you can just hang in there with us for just a couple more minutes, we're going to come back to you and take some questions from you. But I want to talk about independent work. How are you providing fix-ups on the independent work? Is there a process for students to correct and resubmit their work? Tara, you talked a little bit about this already, so let me go to Kristal. Do you have a process for students to correct and resubmit their work on corrections?
With their Google Classroom, really easy. The kids send it back and forth. Teacher can say, up, you got to fix up 2 more, send it back. Some kids it takes 2 or 3 times. Hopefully not, because then you go, With our lower grades, we use Class Dojo, where they just take a picture, send it in. And then a lot of the teachers are using the whiteboard that's attached to Zoom, and they'll put the problem there to refirm it up the next day. With Class Dojo, not quite as easy to send it back and forth to say the immediate response is not there. You almost have to wait till the next day, so the kids can fix it up.
Just exploring that aspect of the whiteboard a little bit. So if it's something that the teacher noticed a good amount of the group missed, she's able to take that and firm up that particular question or concept the next day. That's good to hear.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What about check-ins with the instructor? This might be more for older students, but do you have students that are meeting with the instructor at another time outside of the lesson to review performance on their independent work or their lessons? Kristal, what about you on that one?
Definitely. Where we have a lot of our instructional paras, the paras will send the information to the teacher. So the regular teacher meets at least twice a week with the student to either talk about, oh, it looks like you got everything right on your independent work, or, oh, way to go on passing out your checkout number 5. So the teacher still has that connection with the kids. Which means a little more communication process. We have to make sure that our data is up to date daily so the teachers have something to talk with the kids. Independent work, they don't necessarily, the teacher doesn't necessarily fix up the independent work, but if we're seeing a child miss a lot on the independent work, then the teacher or the instructional para will make contact with parents and this child to go over things so they don't slip.
That's good to hear. So again, just, it's business as normal. Even though we can't physically be there with our kids, we're still maintaining those high expectations for student performance and independent work. I want to talk about instructional leaders and school leaders a little bit. I don't want to leave them out. How have your school leaders been able to monitor distance learning and provide feedback to the teachers? Tara, what about you with this one?
So I think, whether it's a school that's doing live instruction or recorded videos, all of the schools I know are taking time at some point during that week, and then they're watching those videos and providing the teachers weekly feedback on those videos. And like I said, that might be a recorded live or a pre-recorded teacher video. I know some of the schools are even bringing in us, the implementation managers, to help support them on that, watch the videos with them, discuss things that they're seeing in the video and how to improve those. And so I think that with the schools that I'm working with, that's an ongoing thing where they are watching those videos and giving the teachers weekly feedback on that.
Great to hear. Kristal, what about you? Do you have instructional leaders at your school that are able to review and give feedback either in real time or viewing a recording of their instructors for these distance learning sessions?
Yeah, one of the things that I think is really powerful in our school, we do data meetings. So like first grade meets on Monday. Today we met with 4th grade, where we actually all watch videos together. We are sharing, and that's really powerful, that teachers can say, hey, did you try this? Or look, I made this whiteboard, or we're using the goodbye list on the whiteboard, or I'm using Word doing this with kids to help them firm up. So I just think it's really powerful to let the teachers also take ownership in what's going on. And then, yes, we do review and share with one another.
Great to hear. Well, we're really starting to get tight on time, and I definitely want to take a moment to get some questions from our viewers. So I'm going to go back to Rochelle and see if we have any questions from our viewers that we can answer in terms of monitoring student performance, providing frequent responses, giving that informative or corrective feedback. So Rochelle, do we have any questions from our audience that our panelists can answer?
We have several questions that are focused around how to access students and also the perspective of parents on specific things. So one question is related back to the scheduling piece that I know we talked about on Monday. But how are you managing schedules at your sites? And are you using any kind of block scheduling? So I think the question boils down to how much time do you have with students across the week?
Panelists, if you feel comfortable answering that question, give me a thumbs up or raise your hand on scheduling. Kristal looks like she's ready to talk.
Okay. Scheduling is a nightmare, and I am the resource person, so I have lots of IEPs. So one of the things we did is we made sure like all of 5th grade is teaching math at this time. All of 1st grade, we're going to do the reading. So we set the schedule up by our school so that I was able to like, there's no way I can hit all those kids. So our administration was really good about saying, okay, let's try and do your live Zooms. So the live Zoom for math is at this time so that I was able to pull in all the other times. So I just think that's really important that as a whole school you work. And then we also have parents that, you know, can't do that. So we've got teachers that start at 7:30 and they go to like 6:30, 7 o'clock. They're still meeting with kids and they just take their time off in the afternoon or we just have to be flexible so we can hit all kids.
Yeah, you mentioned that on Monday that you're really trying your best to work with both parents and their schedules. Your teachers are parents. And so you did mention that you have teachers that are teaching all throughout the day from very early in the morning to late at night. So we're just per the norm, teachers are just going above and beyond to get it done. Rochelle, any other additional questions from our viewers that we can answer?
Yes, this is also dealing with student access and parent perspective. So the idea of our parents responding to your emails and phone calls, are they feeling overwhelmed? What has been the overall perception that you've gotten back from parents?
Anybody comfortable with answering that one?
Well, okay, I'm unmuted, so I'm just going to dive into that because parents, for the majority, I thought, oh, we're just going to be this little, we're going to be bugging them so much, but I think they so much appreciate the help they're getting, especially when I said, I'm going to take over the reading. You're not going to have to do that by yourself, and they want the help. The other really great thing is I've had several parents say, oh my gosh, I love listening to you because now I know how I was supposed to be reading with my child. Oh, really? You're supposed to make them say it perfect before you move on. So I think it's been a really good thing for parents to hear the right way to do it because we don't get them in our schools very often to sit through a whole reading lesson. So I have just been pleasantly surprised how receptive our parents are and how willing they are to like adjust schedules. If like I had a meeting yesterday, so we're able to bump the Zoom meetings with kids, and they were just so willing to do that. So I think it's been great.
Fantastic to hear. Panelists, anything to add on that with parents feeling overwhelmed and easing their concerns? Alexis?
Yeah, so I will say from my perspective, and again, I'm a teacher right now, so I've had parents who honestly tell me they feel very overwhelmed and, you know, sometimes the workload is a lot. They have a lot of subjects to do. So it's just, you know, knowing the balance for not only their scholar, but for them as well, because again, some of our parents are working. So just making sure, you know, okay, what can I do on my end for you guys, you know, helping them, getting that communication open, because the more that you're there for them, it's going to be easier and it's going to be a nice, you know, very well to adapt into what we're doing. So I think for me, it's just, okay, I'll only assign just one worksheet for the week. And hopefully that will build you up into getting 2 worksheets a week or 3 worksheets a week. So just starting small and then gradually making your way to how we would normally do it at school.
That's great to hear because our students come from varying sizes of families and varying home situations. So just knowing that we're doing the best we can as educators to get things as close to normal as possible. Normal is a quote unquote word, isn't it? Rochelle, any other questions from our viewers that we can answer? I know we're getting really close on time. It's 15 after the hour, but if we can take one more, I'd love to do that.
Okay, I would like to ask you to give them information on how to access the Connect Ed lessons online as well as the student lessons, unless you're already going to put that in later.
Okay, so the Connect Ed licenses, and I'm really quickly thinking if there's anything I can share that I have access to very quickly, but let me just speak to that very quickly. Talk about the Connect Ed licenses. You will need to have a Connect Ed license, which usually is purchased with your program. It's usually a separate purchase, so it's not included with your materials unless you're working with Connecting Math Concepts Comprehensive Edition. Then it is included. So if you are a Reading Mastery user or a corrective reading user, you would need to have a Connect Ed license separate purchase from the purchase of your materials. That license is approximately about $80. It's a little bit less than that, and that covers 1 year and multiple levels within your program. So if you purchase a corrective reading decoding license, you have all 4 levels, A through C. If you purchase a reading mastery license, you have all the levels of reading mastery. And you would need to get with your McGraw-Hill sales rep to do that. The student textbooks, McGraw-Hill has generously made available for free for the remainder of this school year. To access those, you will go to my.mheducation.com. And really quickly, let me just see, I have a slide that I can show for that. So let me just really quickly show that and get that up for you guys. So that you don't have to write that down so much. So, okay, so you are going to go to, again, my.mheducation.com. The login is capital D, capital I, student 2020, and the password is the same. So again, capital D, capital I, lowercase student 2020, and you'll have access to reading mastery, reading and language textbooks, and connecting math concepts. Please note that corrective reading is not available at this time, but McGraw-Hill has generously made that available for free for the remainder of the school year. So again, for a Connect Ed license, get in contact with your local sales rep, and they can get you going on that, and then hopefully you can explore these materials as well for free for your students. So. I'm going to go ahead now and end our session. And first, I would like to thank our panelists for joining us today. And so panelists, do you have any final thoughts or words of advice to instructors that are trying to continue to make direct instruction productive for their students for the rest of the school year?
I would just say that, kind of piggybacking off of what Kristal said a minute ago in regards to parent participation and willingness to be involved with that. A lot of the schools I know are really apprehensive about doing live instruction because they feel like it will overwhelm the parents. And I think Kristal's school had a really good attitude. And I've told them, if you get some, it's better than none. And then if you're willing to take that extra step that like Kristal's school is doing, and make arrangements for the other students that maybe couldn't participate in that live lesson and schedule them at a different time, then I really think you can make it work. But I think some schools just kind of are fearful that, oh, well, only 2 kids will show up. Well, 2 kids is better than no kids. And then you're able to monitor at least those 2 kids. So we just kind of have to be flexible with that and be flexible with being able to find another time to work with those kids who can't attend.
Thanks for that, Terrace. Just keeping it moving forward, getting those kids in however we can, and just sticking with it and staying with the cause of educating our kids.
Right.
Panelists, any other final thoughts before we leave?
I just think, one of my favorite quotes is, it's always hard before it's easy. So, we're going through that hard part, but hopefully it'll get easier and easier as we learn all these new normal things for us.
Thank you for that, Kristal. All right. I'm going to bring Brian back on because it's about time for us to end, or past time, obviously. So Brian, do you have any final thoughts for us as we end our session today?
He's muted.
Muted. Can't hear you. There you go. Oh, we're having some tech.
There we go. Sorry about that.
There we go.
So hello again. Thanks for joining us. And as I said earlier, NIFDI really would like to hear from all of you. If you check your email, you're going to see a message from me with a link to a feedback form. Please take a few minutes and answer the three short questions about your experience with us today. This is going to help us know more about what you want and what you need to support your efforts to help students. I'd like to point out also on our website a couple of things. They're under the resources, under the videos tab, there are a couple of examples of distance teaching taking place, one with a reading mastery kiddo and another with some decoding students. So that might be a helpful resource for you. Also want to remind you, NIFDI is available for consultation and remote coaching. If you check on our website again, nifdi.org, check under the services tab, and there's more information on that. As Beverly did say a few moments ago, this session has been recorded and a link to it will be added to our website shortly. So tell your friends about it, or if there's something that you didn't quite catch, you can review it there. This forum, as well as the one held a week earlier, are also available on our YouTube channel. You might consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. It's easy to find. And I think that pretty much covers it. Thanks for joining us. And we really all from NIFDI, we wish you all very good health and teaching success. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you to our panelists, and we hope to see you on another event very soon. Thank you and have a great night.
Thank you.